Hello and welcome. Good to see you all today. If I always love to see people's faces, even though in the beginning you're going to be focusing away from the monitor, as am I. But afterward, we spend a little time chatting and talking. So it's really nice to see your faces if you're able to do that. If you have to move around or if you're moving at all, if you can just turn your monitor off, that'd be great because then it's less distracting for the rest of us here. And yeah, and then I can hear it. So hopefully when I'm unmuted, you can maybe listen in my background and you guys can hear the sound I was talking about earlier. But so today, now I'm going to get really distracted by it. Today, what I had in mind, what's leading me to this, let yourselves just get comfortable, find a nice cozy place to sit, either outside or inside, doesn't matter. And what's inspiring today's sit and our focus for that is something that happened for me a couple days ago. I went out to the lake and I went to this like little secret kind of way to access the lake, and not many people go that way. And so, you guys hear that? Yeah, it must be a juvenile. It might be a young one. Anyway, so he's like talking behind me. How do you have a conversation when there's like a young hawk like da 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 da? All right. Anyway, so it's a small little trail. It's like maybe like a quarter-mile trail to get to the lake shore. And I've been there before. I think I mentioned to you all that I've been there before. And one thing that happened for me was that while I was out there, there wasn't really much happening. There weren't like a lot of a lot of birds around. And so I thought I would just take some time to practice my owl eyes as I teach you all. And so I did that. So I just was standing really still and I was focusing my eyes in front of me. But one thing I love to do, especially when I have the time to do it, and because in particular I've heard something there before that I wasn't aware of, it's happened to me before. So what I did is, even though my eyes were focusing in front, I had my ears focusing behind me, which is really challenging. And we're going to try and work on that today. So again, wherever you position yourself today, what I would encourage you to do, a lot of us like to have our backs to something, sturdy. So I know for me, there's trees and whatnot right behind me. So there's a lot that can happen behind here. So what I would encourage you to do is just change your position a little bit today so that you can not have a wall behind you. So you can actually have some openness, or it's just something that's like, yeah, that's not a wall. If you're able to do that, if you're able to shift your posture or your position so that your back is exposed. I know it's a little more vulnerable that way, but if you feel like you're in a safe place to do that, that's what I'd encourage you to do. And what was really awesome was, because I was doing that, I was able to pick up on this, what started as a very subtle bird alarm and turned into a very intense bird alarm. And it was very early in the morning, and I've come face to face with a bear out there before. It was just me and the bear, and we were both walking up over the hill, and we were like, oh, it's you, okay. And then the bear kept going the way it was going, and I turned and went around and whatnot. So I didn't know who was behind me. I knew the birds were going nuts. And I wasn't sure what animal was out there, likely a mammal based on the type of alarms that were happening. But I probably would have heard it eventually, but I was able to hear the start of the alarm call, a sequence, because I was sending all my attention with my ears behind me. And the reason I'm going to encourage us to do this today is because a lot of times when we're birding, we've got our binoculars on, we're focused in front of us. But sometimes there's some pretty cool stuff happening behind us, especially things that are birds that are vocalizing. So let's work on that skill set today. So go ahead and find your comfy spot. Again, with your back exposed if you can, or at least a little bit available to have some sort of noises behind you. And your feet planted on the ground in some fashion. And just tap into the earth below you right now. Allowing yourself just to calm and get physically grounded by touching the earth right now. Or if it's a floor, that's okay too. The earth is below you. So let yourself just tap into the rhythm of the earth today. And as you're doing this, allow yourself to just send your awareness from the soles of your feet and slowly move all the way up your legs to your abdomen and your spine, to your chest, your throat, and just go all the way throughout your whole body, your arms, your face, your ears, the crown of your head. And just notice. Notice if you've got anything that feels particularly tight or stiff, any parts of you that are holding on more than they might need to right now. And are there any parts of you that are really supple and soft and open? Those parts that don't try so hard as the other parts. And just let yourself accept all of who you are today. Parts that might be holding on tightly and the parts that are just present and are just being themselves. And take a nice deep breath in and let it go. And this time when you inhale, do so with the intention of smelling the air. Noticing how it might be different from the last time you gave your attention to the scents in your environment. What's unique about the smell this morning? Nice work. Now just send your eyes off into the distance and find one point to focus on, something that your eyes can really just hone in on. Maybe it's a notch in a tree, maybe it's your neighbor's window. And just focus on that one point right now. And as you're focusing, you're still able to soften as well. So stay with all your attention at that one point in the center, but then let your vision just soften all around. So extending your peripheral vision now and just seeing how far you can see in all directions, even though you're just looking at one point right in front of you. How much can you expand your vision right now? And what do you have to do with your eyes to allow them to soften? Give yourself permission to do that. And just noticing when your eyes soften, is there any part of your body that starts to soften as well? Just noticing what you start to pick up on, what you start to perceive as your eyes are soft and expansive right now. Nice work. And so let's begin. We'll take it easy on ourselves to start with. So our eyes are focused in front and to the sides and above and below us, taking a nice big peripheral vision. Let's also tune our listening to that area in front of us as well. So just noticing the sounds. We'll start with the prominent sounds. Are there one or two prominent sounds in the area in front of you? And just give your attention to those right now. And now, as if you were in a marsh and you were trying to peer through the reeds, I want you to use your ears to peer through the sounds and listen now for sounds that are a bit more subtle and gentle. And now do your best to hold both. So listening for that prominent sound, if that same one is still there, or a different one. And then listening for a subtle, quieter sound. And can you hold space for both at the same time? Good work. And now continue to look in front of yourself, but this time we're going to stretch our sense of hearing out to our sides now. So we were focused a bit in front of us, and now we're going to not go behind us yet, but just out to our sides. And then see how far in the distance you can stretch your sense of hearing right now. Imagining you can listen for miles away. How far can you listen right now? Sometimes it's helpful to tune your attention to something. So if it's windy where you are, or maybe there's traffic noise, or like I had a little while ago, a lawnmower. If it's not too loud, something that you can do is just put it in your mind that you'd like to hear a bird sound up far away in the distance. And so you're really searching for a bird sound right now, as far in the distance as you can listen for. I'll let you try that out for a few minutes. Might just be very subtle. All right, so now you're going to keep your eyes in owl eyes. So imagining that that's our only goal today, is just to use owl eyes. However, we want to be aware of what's all around us. And so I'm going to let you just play with this to start off with. So your eyes are going to be softened and focused in front of you, while your ears are tuned behind you. And just notice what that experience is like in your body. And I'm going to let you stay that way for the next few minutes. So some of you may have a sound that's pulling your attention toward the front of you. And I really want you to do your best, as if it mattered, as if you really had to pay attention to the sounds behind you, but you couldn't turn around. So do your best to send your attention with your ears behind you right now. You really want to know what's behind you. Now we're going to add a little layer of challenge. So some of you may already be doing this, but if you're not already, I'd like you to find something particular to watch. So whether it's an insect or it actually is a bird that you get to watch right now, I want you to watch something specific. And if you have no insects or birds around you, maybe you can watch a plant. And so I want you to give your attention with your eyes to that thing in front of you, but I really want you to listen with your ears still behind you. And just like in a meditation practice, if your mind starts to wander, that's totally fine. Just do your best to continue to bring yourself back to your awareness of the area behind you. And if you're doing pretty quote unquote good with staying with your awareness with your ears behind you, then see how far you can stretch that awareness. How far back behind you can you expand your awareness of your hearing? And now, in our final few minutes, just allow yourself to be here in whatever way you'd like to be here. So, wherever your attention is drawn with your ears and your eyes, just allow it to go. Just give ourselves that little gift of permission just to play right now. All right, so take the next moment or so and you can offer your own gratitude or appreciation for those ones that you interacted with today. And if some people are inspired, you can even offer a blessing to the ones that you interacted with. Alrighty. So I'd love to hear from folks what that was like for you. How was that to stretch your ears in one direction and your eyes in the other direction? You can just go ahead and yeah, Cindy, I see your hand. Go for it.
Oh my gosh, that was so hard.
Yeah.
I really haven't struggled with anything in this sit like that. Um, so I think part of it is my sit spot is facing my pond. So there's a lot going on in front of me. Behind me is like just a 3 acre lawn. So there's less. So having a sitting here and working so hard to try to listen for something behind me. But I think it's important because when I am elsewhere out birding, sitting quietly, sometimes, as you know, a bird will come right in behind me, very
Mm,
close. And I don't want to move because I'm, it's like, wow. And so I don't want to move at all. I think for me, movement scares the birds away. Not so much talking to somebody or something, but movement. But anyway, and so like I really want to see it and I can't. Anyway, so I tried to, imagine there was a bird behind so I could listen real hard behind me. But boy, it was so distracting what was going on in front of me. That was very interesting
mm.
for
Yeah,
me.
I agree. I also, it was very challenging for me as well when I was doing it. I actually talked to a friend of mine who's a meditation master, and I told her what I did the other day. I said, I was out there watching and I was doing the whole thing behind and in front. And And she said that's actually a technique that they use in like some pretty advanced meditation practices. And so I haven't had her describe to me yet what that is or how we got into some other topic. We were out on a walk. And so I'm going to ask her more about that because it's really fascinating to me what was happening and watching like my own mind. And it is very challenging. But again, it's like, I believe it's a skill that we can learn to develop and to hone, and whether it's really for our safety or just for our own curiosity and pleasure, like you're saying, like to know what birds are behind you when you're focused in front of you. And anyway, I have more to say, but I want to hear from more people. Cindy, thank you so much for
Thank
sharing.
you.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Would anyone else like to share their experience? Yeah, Marisa, hello. Good to see you.
Hi.
Hi.
I was very distracted by what sounds like cicadas. Are they out now?
Cicadas?
Cicadas, sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
Are
yeah.
they
But
out?
it depends on where you live, but yes, I know for me they are. Yeah.
Really loud. And all I can think of when that happens is the trees are suffering. So it affects me
Oh.
physically. When a
Mm,
tree suffers, I get affected,
mm,
especially if it's a maple. And I think they're on the maples. It's a
mm.
Canadian thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that technique of listening is something we do in Aikido, the self-defense is you do that. That's one of the techniques. Except you do it with a finger, and how far can you see behind, and same with hearing. But it is a martial arts technique, so that your whole body is the center, and you're creating a virtual bubble around you that it is connected to your core. If that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Oh, it totally does. And I think that's what my friend was trying to describe to me. I wasn't totally getting it in the moment, but the way you just put it, now that makes total sense because we can't physically see behind us, but our
Right,
ears can listen behind us. And so,
right.
in a sense, we have the eyes behind us with using our ears. And the more we get to know what certain sounds, that like how a deer sounds versus how a mountain lion sounds as it's walking, like we can start to picture all that and then know
Exactly. It's a
around us.
sphere
Yeah,
sound,
the
which
sphere.
is one thing I would recommend if any of you have iPhones, um, is to listen to spatial audio on Apple Music, only because I'm convinced it's going to change our brains. It helps your brain, uh, hear sounds in different dimensions, front, back, movement. And once you start being aware that you can do that, and it's all happening in your brain, it's
Mm,
not really an ear thing, it's a
mm,
brain thing,
mhm,
then
mhm,
your brain will be more open to, let's say, a bird going right to left down,
mm,
because your brain will be used to it from listening to the music you listen to.
mm. Yeah.
So that's that. I would encourage you to try that. It's spatial audio available in and I think more and more music will become that.
Mm.
So it will be interesting to see how our brains perceive sound, because of the spatial audio is basically when you move, you see it moving. It's pretty freaky, but
Wild.
it will definitely train your brain to think like that, and
Mm,
it'll be more gradual. So
mm,
those who are having issues might have less issues when
mm.
they do it with music at first. Just
Thank
food for
you.
thought.
Thank you. Thank you. So good to hear from you. Yeah, Julia, go for
Now,
it.
Marissa, would you write that in the chat, please? Because I'm not sure
We'll
whether
do.
you're saying spatial or special or
Oh,
whatever.
spatial, as in space. So
Spatial.
Yeah, she'll put it
correct.
in the chat.
I'll put it in the chat right now. Yeah.
Okay, great, great.
I'm a sound expert, so that's why I know
Oh,
all about all
wonderful.
this stuff.
Awesome.
So I had right on cue some sound. The garbage trucks came through the neighborhood, and I had noticed, which was a bit unusual for this time in my yard, there just was no bird activity.
Huh.
And then here come these, the garbage truck. It's like thunder with big plastic bins, and they bang them around. So it's like thunder. And I was chuckling at that a little bit. Um, but I could note, I knew where they were. Of course, they're so loud, you know where they are.
Yeah.
If you fail to put your trash out, you can, you know, if you have time to run it out to the curb, you know, all that sort of thing. And then they left, and then I started hearing, you know, traffic more in the distance and so on. But what surprised me then was when there was this loud sound, I had a perception of where I was. And then when it went away, where it was not a dominant factor, I had much more presence with my own yard. And I've been looking out because there are a lot of things blooming and lots of insects and so on. And I mean, it was as if the sound overshadowed everything. And then when it was gone, this was more present again. I don't know what the phenomenon was, but it was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Wow, Julia.
Mm.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Right on cue when you said focus on something, a hummingbird sat right on a little twig. And it was just, you know, as things were receding, then the bird, and then the Mississippi kites are calling now. So
and what was that like for you when, because I think when we really have something that where like curiosity is piqued, when we're really interested in watching something, we tend to shut our ears off, and unless it's that thing that's making the sound, right? And so I'm curious, when you actually watched the hummingbird, what did you notice for yourself? Were you able to keep your attention behind you, or how'd that go?
Yes, I was able to. I was able to see that, but hear what was going on.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good work. Good work. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good practice. This is a good practice for all of us, and you can do it whenever you're birding or anything you're doing. If you're talking to a friend, even, you know, sometimes I'll play with that a little bit. It's like if I'm in a conversation with someone outside, I'll also see like, all right, how far can I hear right now? Like while still paying attention to that conversation, you know?
Well, this isn't very pleasant to think about, but it really would serve us well to do that anytime we walk out of the grocery store or walk into a parking lot. Just have our awareness be around.
100%. I mean, always. Really, that's like what Marisa was sharing before. You know, with martial arts, with anyone who trains in that sort of more self-defense kind of way, that's part of what they're doing. You know, and that's I guess an element of training that I add into some of the folks. I'm not sure Adela's here, and part of the master's course, we dive into this conversation a little bit with some of the skills that you learn, because there's certain ways that you can approach new areas so that you do this. You know, it's I think it's important for us just as humans walking around the world, you know, and how we approach different different places, you know? So yeah, Julie, I think I love what came to you today. Thank you. Anyone else want to share? What was it like for you? Was that you, Linda? Did you put your hand up? Oh, you're muted.
Unmute. I got it. Yes, this was something that I kept thinking about while I was doing this, an experience that I had about 3 months ago. I took a nature journaling class down in Missoula, and we were doing an event map where we just walked around different places, and then we would just sit for a while in a certain spot and just sketch or write or absorb whatever we experienced there for like about 10-15 minutes. So I sat down by this creek, and I was watching. I love to watch the water ripple in creeks, and I was watching that, and I could hear it. And there was a yellow warbler that would periodically flit from one of the bushes across the creek toward the creek and then back. So I was focused on that, and I became aware of sound behind me. And I didn't want to turn around because I wanted to watch that yellow warbler, but I was aware of this sound, you know, and then within, oh gosh, maybe 30 seconds, there was a whoosh right by my head, and a bird flew and landed right at my feet on my side of the creek. Turned out, to my utter, it was just, I was so delighted. It was a Swainson's thrush, which we have. They're a late spring arrival. This was like the end of May. And it sat there for a while. And it's the first good look I've ever really had at a Swainson's thrush. So it was really, I was thinking about that experience while you were instructing us, because I thought this is so, I was doing that at that time without realizing it, but how I was doing it was not at the same time. I was going back and forth. I watched the yellow warbler with the creek, and then I'd become aware of the sound, and then I would go back to the yellow warbler in the creek, and then to the sound. But I was thinking about how much I might be missing, not always being aware of what's behind me when I'm out in nature. There's all kinds of things that could be going on back there, really wonderful things or delightful things or birds or everything else. So anyway, I wanted to thank you for sharing that, because that kind of brought it to my attention what I was doing that day. I hadn't really processed it, but it's so worth it to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's a really powerful skill to hone, honestly. Like, again, whether it's for, it could help you in a survival situation, like whether it's like, you're just walking out in a parking lot and you need to be aware of like a sound coming behind you, or whether it's, this beautiful bird that ends up landing right in front of you. Like that's just amazing and gorgeous. And yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, you bet. Can you hear the blue jay back here? Did you hear that?
Oh, sometimes the Zoom
he's
cuts
like,
out.
It's like got a trumpet.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. One thing I was going to say that I'm not always a big fan of using Merlin. I think sometimes it pulls us away from our actual, experience in the moment. But one thing I do like to use it for is when I go out, I'll start the recording and I won't look at it at all until I've left or I'm done. And then I'll look at what it says it heard. And the great thing about Merlin is that you can go back and you can click on the bird name and it'll take you to that place in the recording. And so you can listen, you can be like, was that really a whatever? Like I go to this one place by the lake and it always tells me there's a turkey there, but it's not a turkey. It's the way that the dock makes this funny sound as it's like riding up and down on the water, and it's like, no, it's not a turkey. It's just the dock. But that's where, like, when I was recording, when I had this instance happen with the bird alarm, and I was just curious, I'm like, was I able to pick up on the first subtle alarm, or was it later? And so I was listening, I was able to play back the recording of the progression. And yeah, so it's just it can be a fun thing to do where you go back and you listen, like, what did I miss? Like what was out there that when my attention was like, oh my gosh, there's a warbler in the tree and I gotta find that warbler, and I got it's all like in front of me. Like what else was happening behind you that might have been just as cool, and worth note. And I think also, like, the other thing I'll say before we wrap, and if anyone else has something to share, you're welcome to it, is that I was out looking at some shorebirds this weekend, and with shorebirds, if you've ever been out looking at shorebirds, oftentimes it's a lot of time in the binoculars or in the scope, and you're just really focused. You're looking through every single individual, especially if people are looking for rarities. This one guy that I was birding with, he's an expert. He's amazing with his shorebirds, and he literally goes through the group of like hundreds of little sanderlings, and will look at each individual one to see if it might be something rare or unique. But while he was doing that, he was so tapped in that even though he was so focused on these little birds, he was able to hear when, I forget who it was that went over, but it wasn't like a rare species, but it was an uncommon one. He's like, oh, the such and suches are going over. And so everyone's able to like look up and, oh, cool. So he heard their subtle call kind of off in the distance while he was focused. So it's a great birding skill to start to hone and practice. So well done, everybody. Keep it up. And does anyone have anything else they want to share before we get going? It looks like just before you leave, make sure you check the chat. I think that Claudia put a picture of the vulture in the chat, so it's super cool if you want to take a quick look at that. I'll stay on for
And I put a meditative bird that I saw in Gloucester. She was in the water and just meditating.
Hi, Marita. So good to see you again. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining today, and we'll see you next time. Lots of love to everyone and keep practicing. Let me know how it goes for you. All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.